use cases of Web3 through DePIN.
Hello everyone, Daniel from DePIN Hub here. Today we're interviewing David Carvalho, CEO and co-founder of Naoris Protocol, a company pioneering decentralized post-quantum cybersecurity infrastructure. Naoris Protocol is building a global security mesh that transforms every device into a real-time validator node, delivering quantum-resistant decentralized trust and security for both Web 2 and Web 3 systems. Their mission is to eliminate single point of failure, future-proof digital infrastructure, and empower users and enterprises to defend against the next generation of cyber threats, all while leveraging the DePIN model to create a resilient community power network. It was awesome to have you here in the podcast, David, and excited to finally have Naoris Protocol in the podcast and talk about everything that you're building, because I think the technology that is being developed right now is going to be super, super important for the near future. And, like the quantum computing and everything that's happening. But to get started, you introduce yourself, your background, and your role at Naoris Protocol.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here at the DePIN Hub. Thank you so much for having me. And it's a pleasure to also meet you personally. So a little bit about myself. So my name is David Carvalho. I'm originally from Portugal. My background is in cryptography and in cybersecurity. I've been a cybersecurity researcher and ethical hacker for 25 years now. I've been global chief of security for a number of multi-billion-dollar companies in Europe and also in the UK, mainly in highly regulated spaces, airports, the environments related to defense, things that have foot on the door with countries and things like that, other nation state related things. I've also been leading a cyber SWAT team that deals with nation state level events on the cyber area for close to a decade and a half. And I've been advising a number of nation states under the European Union and the NATO umbrella that are members of these organizations on areas like cyber espionage, cyber war, cyber terrorism, mitigation of risks around those areas, in other areas that are related to a number of think tanks on, like, for example, smart cities, future technology, quantum cryptography, and things like this. And so, yeah, that's actually what eventually led to the creation of the Naoris Protocol. So I've spent my career watching centralized infrastructure fail spectacularly. From things that we have analyzed in our groups, like for example, power grids, to financial networks, to other environments. And after building critical systems for 3 continents that I was involved in, I realized that we're solving the wrong problem, or we're looking at things in the wrong way. When everybody, including all my peers as chief of security, were just, it didn't matter how much budget you have, you just are waiting to be hacked one day. So it was obvious to me as an early, cryptocurrency miner and participant in infrastructures in Web3, that the way was to bring together, the most mature areas of cyber, most mature areas of cryptography, most mature areas of decentralized environments, in some AI, to create kind of like a universal solution, let's say, that would be decentralized in nature. So what we didn't need from a perspective of security and trust was more centralized stuff. What we actually needed was to make centralization itself obsolete, because that's the source of most problems. So at Naoris, right now, I'm architecting what we call the great DePIN migration into decentralized cyber-physical assets. The shift from vulnerable centralized infrastructure to kind of like what we call an unstoppable mesh of devices. So we're looking at 75 billion devices protecting each other potentially in the next decade. So we're going to have all these IoT coming. I call it the Internet of Trouble. They're a collection of single points of failure, right? So every device is a single point of failure to everything it is connected to. And obviously, the logic step is to decentralize it all and make them all part of a resilient, co-validating infrastructure, so that if you want to, tamper with the state of one of them, you actually need to tamper with the consensus of all of them, right? And that was what led to the creation of, really what is, DePIN infrastructure is in a name, right? But we were doing DePIN before DePIN was around. We just didn't have a name for it. It was very much focused on critical infrastructure, dealing with a lot of things related to defense and government technology and critical infrastructure. And there was, just to give you an idea, and what led to the project was a meeting that I had with my mentor and a very good friend of mine, the former chief of intelligence of NATO at the time, back in 2017, 18, where the idea was floated. Hey, why wouldn't we use like decentralization and some methods to actually create more resilient in very critical environments, since they are following the same problem, and that's like nobody's fault, is how the internet has been made. And so that led to the creation of Naoris Protocol and the creation of the consensus mechanism that we have, and other things under a number of mandates from former NATO leaders. So I believe personally that DePIN isn't the future of infrastructure. I think it's the only infrastructure that has a future. So as it is right now, we're on borrowed time. And when you add, like, for example, quantum threats, that are quantum threats towards the backbone of the whole thing, then it's just, we're waiting for an asteroid, like the dinosaurs were waiting for an asteroid, right?
Exactly. That's a great intro. And can you explain, like, imagine I'm 5 years old. How would you explain Naoris Protocol for a child?
So imagine a situation like, there's a village, right? And in a village, everybody knows each other. So everybody knows who they can trust, who they can't trust, who is the village idiot, so on, so on, so on. Right now, digital systems cannot communicate like we can. We can communicate. There's a lot of data that we absorb. Digital systems live based on a lot of assumptions, right? So there is no capability for you to prove that what you're seeing on your screen, that may be something about another system far away, is actually real. You actually need to trust something about that system far away, that's a centralized thing, to tell you something. So you're living on top of a lot of assumptions. There is currently no way for you to prove that the state of something is good while you operate that something. Like, for example, an API or a piece of hardware or a camera or a sensor, right? So if you think about this is really powerful, because once you actually have the capability to mathematically prove that everything is in a good state as it operates, then for the first time, you will be able to, expand the kind of services that you have and uplift civilization to a different level, where everything is in a always on, verified good state as it operates. So that's Naoris Protocol. Naoris Protocol, if I would summarize kind of like the vision, is to make physical infrastructure and decentralized physical infrastructure the dominant infrastructure model, by making it the only secure infrastructure model in a provable way. Like, you can actually prove it at any point in time that everything is good. Otherwise, it couldn't work. I would say most people see DePIN as kind of like an experiment. We see it as a definite evolution, and there is some fundamental areas that is an evolution. One is the integrity of things, and the other perspective is the trust of things, the confidentiality of things, and the availability of things, right? It's about making things available and making them continue to operate and safe and secure and transparent. So I think that we are part of the catalyst that makes this evolution, let's say, inevitable.
Yeah, I like the way that you explain, because for me, it reminds me a lot about the explanation of blockchain and a ledger and Bitcoin, right? Because you're in this village, everybody knows each other, and all the way that you know how much one person owns the other one needs to have a consensus. So you guys are getting this concept and bringing it into a network protocol. Like, how is that working in terms of like more technical?
Right. So we have created, together with a number of universities in both sides of the Atlantic, the first post-quantum consensus mechanism. Why post-quantum? Well, first of all, quantum computers are a real thing. They're coming. They're here. All cryptography in the world is vulnerable to them. It's all based on what we call elliptic curve-based cryptography. Quantum computers are really, really good at breaking this. They're not really good for many other things. As such, we have been actually aligned with a number of like visions from, generals and things like that on the military side of things, to create resiliency for, infrastructure, but I'm talking about even national infrastructure and defense infrastructure, government infrastructure, that kind of infrastructure, even defense infrastructure, backed by that. So the consensus mechanism that we have is, first of all, an infrastructure-based consensus mechanism. So decentralized proof of security, or DePOSEC, is the beating heart of Naoris Protocol. For the first time, we can prove that all participants, that is, all nodes, all validators, all processes, all pieces of hardware, are actually in a trusted state as they operate. And this is really, really important because in Web3, this is currently not possible. Like, for you to be a validator or a participant, you just need to be online, and you maybe need to have some tokens. But so this is the gap that we're feeling. It's one of our biggest innovations, which is the fact that you can participate without being validated as a baseline. So chains right now they operate a little bit like out of the atmosphere. They think that cryptography is all that is, but actually no. The cryptography is underpinned by, servers that are in the cloud or devices that are validating them and so on. But if you can't prove that you can trust these, then the whole system is imbalanced, right? So you can actually leverage maybe, and all the hacks that you see are like this. They are not attacks against the cryptography. Like, the cryptography is good until quantum computers come, right? But the attacks are against, like, single points of failure. Somebody steals a key, they exploit the vulnerability, and then they move laterally over the network because they take over the processes. So the way that we see it, and that's why we call, the infrastructure that we have created sub-zero layer, is the kind of like the last frontier to decentralize is the infrastructure itself through decentralized infrastructure, right? So that's it. That's the beating heart of Naoris Protocol, and we believe that logically this is the answer. It needs to come from a place of security. In this case, post-quantum cryptography allows us to have trust over the safety. So, because you can see anything, right? You can have supposedly trust maybe, but how do you know you can trust it? How do you know it's true, right? How do you know that is actually true? So the post-quantum cryptography are the proofs themselves. They are very resilient cryptographically. So even if the attacker has access to a quantum computer, and of course this is to be used into the future, like it's something that you would use forever, like in a critical infrastructure or in a company or in a healthcare process, anything critical. You would like to use something like this, right? So we believe this is the answer, and this kind of mesh, I believe, makes DePIN invisible into the future.
Yeah, and it's super important. And one thing that I'm here for, right, that's so excited to talk to the different DePIN founder and be around DePIN projects is really because this is the future for sure. And the community decentralization, I think it's the next step on like evolution of technology. Can you talk a little bit about the mesh network and how can anyone around the world participate on making the protocol even more secure?
Right. So we have created some dozens of use cases for Naoris Protocol, and we have integrated them into some very large companies already. But currently what we have open to the public is, and we're calling it a testnet, but it's really kind of like a mainnet alpha. That's already running. We have done, and anybody can join this, by the way. We have done more than, I think, 80 million transactions at post-quantum level since 2.5 months ago. We have about 800,000, if not more, nodes operating at the moment. And we have about 2.6 million wallets as part of the ecosystem. And what it does, this specific use case, it's actually one of the mandates that we had from a context of defense. It's an intelligence sharing network. And there's many others, but this is the one that we made public. Anybody can come in and join it. So it's a browser-based node. You download it and you download the wallet as well. You register. And what it does is that as you visit the websites and stuff, it acts like a tool, and it looks at all the code that's on the website, and if there's something there malicious that will, for example, de-anonymize you or steal your data or steal your crypto metadata or try to exploit something on your add-ons, or you have malicious add-ons, or it's distributing malware or phishing, this information, this intelligence gets shared with everybody else on the mesh, right, and vice versa. So it's kind of like hive mind of trust and assurance. So everybody benefits everybody. And currently that's still part of our airdrop. So we are currently on our public sale at the moment. We have had quite a bit of success there, and we have also done also a VIP public sale that it completely, 24 hours was full. So we're very excited about how that went, and just to give you an idea of the conclusion of this DePIN experiment, we have mitigated almost 400 million threats during this time, but that's just a use case, one of many, right? So we're going to be doing others. And as I mentioned before, the community, we see it as the kind of like the beating heart of the project. And what we're looking at into the future is to have like millions and millions of nodes. And the bigger it is, the more resilient it is for everybody, right? Obviously. So we're going to be incentivizing people with other airdrops for other use cases in the future. And one of the way to be kind of like whitelisted for that is to participate in the public sale or to join this one. So I advise anybody to come and participate with Naoris Protocol and join our socials, our Discord, in other environments to do that. So it's really easy to do. But there's going to be others that are more focused on network, other use cases that are more focused on encryption and things like that.
So you mentioned the first use case, like to check the web threats, it's like a Chrome plugin or something like a Firefox
it is.
plugin.
Yeah, it's a Chrome-based node. Yeah.
And then, but that's just like one use case for the protocol, because you're building kind of like an SDK or some protocol that can do a lot of things. It's just like kind of like one product that's built on top of that, right?
That's right. So you can look at the protocol as kind of like a decentralized operating system for trust, right? At post-quantum levels of assurance. There is, probably an infinity of use cases. This is just one. But yes, we're going to be making the SDK available before we go mainnet as well, which will happen next quarter. And then we're going to migrate the current use case into there. So anybody will be able to come in and participate. We have already a lot of interest from, even lots of Web2 companies and also lots of Web3 developers, to jump in and do that. The kind of like vision mission of our project was, because it came from kind of like a little bit of a, critical infrastructure context. The objective was to make Web3 the backbone of Web2. So that was the objective before DePIN was around. So that was our objective since 2017 when we started the research around this. And I'm very happy that we had all that growth, and we brought in very, very interesting people to the team. We brought one of the people that created parts of the internet as we know it. David Holtzman is our chief of strategy. He created the DNS protocol, and he was also an advisor to various presidents in the US on cyber and other areas. He was also CTO of IBM. We have former Microsoft presidents. We have a number of former NATO generals and so on and so forth that are supporting us on this journey. But the core of it is going to be the community, because they're going to be the great benefactors, both in terms of like supporting a network, so receiving rewards on top of what they're doing, and also the benefactors of the solutions that are going to be public.
You mentioned also the testnet was like explosive, right? Like so many, like millions of users. Is any one in particular learning thing that you got from this experience of running these tests?
Yes. So two main things. So the main thing to run these tests was, first of all, to because it's a whole new cryptographic standard that we have created. If you go and you look at our Explorer and other transactions, you'll see, transaction hashes that are like 6 pages long instead of just one line. So these are post-quantum transaction hashes. If you have never seen them, please go and see them. We are the first chain in operation that's doing that. So this is a kind of like at native standards. And we are ahead of the curve. This can be implemented with any other chain. This is something that needs, everybody knows we need to go in that direction. So we're just following the views of, leaders that are, of course, strategic, like that's just the life, right? And we decided to do that. And we have created actually a peer-reviewed paper towards post-quantum cryptography on blockchains with the IEEE Foundation, which is the biggest engineering group in the world. And that's on our website if you want to read it as well. Going back to your point, how can I say, the challenges that I was, or that we were foreseeing were about stability. is this going to be stable? Are we going to fall over? Never happened. It's quite resilient. We have achieved very high speeds, even though the cryptography is like orders of magnitude more complex than what you have on any chain. But what we have also discovered is that, and we didn't expect this kind of adoption, to tell the truth. We expected like 2 orders of magnitude less than that, honestly. But it was really cool to see it. And it was, it was really exciting for us to see that people are excited about that. And they see that there's, the underpinning of like future, technologies, so like something transversal, right? So, something that I've learned is don't go into these kind of things without planning your cloud costs very well. Because after a while, there was some processes on our site still and supporting like 2.4 million participants. Oh my God. Like the costs were insane. but it's all good, and it brought really good things in the end. But it was a good thing that brought, some stress, but brought much more good things.
Yeah, like if you didn't configure the Amazon Lambda, correctly or something like that, your bill probably gonna explode.
Yes, my friend, that's exactly what happened.
Okay, yes, that's what I was like. Okay.
Well, it's not that it was badly configured. We just didn't expect
Too many, exactly. I mean, I know exactly what
And
it
then
is.
if you need to make some changes, you need to have downtime, and we don't want that. So we had to be very careful.
Just take over. Yeah, exactly. I understand completely. Like for example, when we started Hotspotty, we were using Mapbox for the mapping display, and then the platform took over to the point that our Mapbox was the most expensive bill we had every month, and to the point that, okay, we're gonna build our own mapping infrastructure, put everything on Cloudflare. We went from like thousands of dollars to like $12 a month now in our infrastructure. So, but
Wow.
yeah,
Okay. Well, yeah. Just add some more zeros to that, and that's the reality of ours.
yeah, no, exactly. I mean, we were spending so much money. We were spending, I think, like 10, 15K or something on mapping, which is stupid, right? Like, come on, just like to show the little dots on the map doesn't make sense.
Well,
But
you became their most exciting client.
yeah, and then I dropped it because I've built my own infrastructure. But anyway, I think all this stuff is really good, right? Whenever you have too much success, and then you need to, of course, figure out how to grow, how to scale.
These are good problems.
Exactly. Could be much worse. You could have like 100 users and then basically
Oh yeah,
proven
no, that's like so sad. Yeah, yeah.
that'd be really sad. Are you building on top of any other layer 1, or building your own blockchain because you have all these constraints and differences with like massive
Yeah,
hashes?
it's our chain. So it's an EVM compatible chain. It's our own consensus mechanism. So DePOSEC is our own consensus mechanism. It's a custom PBFT chain. It's supposed to work as a meta layer. So just think about it as something that, for example, we can integrate with other protocols, and we can make their transactions post-quantum as well, with or without CK. And the same for infrastructure. So I'm talking about like node infrastructure. You can actually have, proof of state for the whole node infrastructure as they operate. And if something is out of whack, you don't want them to participate. That's one of the biggest things that we achieve. Of course, that allows you to have security, proper security in a decentralized way over your infrastructure. There are no longer single points of failure there. And at the same time, we have the capability to operate as this kind of like meta layer. So you call it bring your own cryptography, so people can actually build layers on top of us where they can, add a certain level of cryptographic security that they want that can be custom to them, with their own tokens, with their own layer 2, so on and so forth. We ourselves, we have 2 main areas. One is the sub-zero layer, which is pure decentralized infrastructure, backed by post-quantum cryptography. And then we have the meta layer that applies to, layer 1s, layer 2s, layer 3s. And that allows also for a lot of customization and to make those quantum resilient as well. So, yeah.
How do I run a validator node, or what are the steps? Because I can imagine how big does this database going to be if you're going to have such like long strings of data.
it really depends on the use case. So we have made this chain to be kind of like a parallels chain. So you can have many use cases that each one has their own Verge cluster. A Verge cluster is a little bit of it's kind of like a side chain where they have its own consensus or its own consensus standards. So, speed, scalability, and cost is not an issue, but you can actually run independent nodes that are dedicated to a certain Verge cluster. So, we have done a number of things privately as well with like big companies and governments where they have their own environment, and they're running their own nodes. But, in the case of a user, and I think as, use cases are explode as we go into mainnet, there is the capability that you're going to be running, for example, local nodes or software-based nodes, or there's hardware-based nodes as well that actually we're making available as well. We're going to have a hardware node sale, which is a limited one for post-quantum validations. We have a number of very well-known buyers already there. But yeah, going back, it really depends on the network that you're in at that point, because there's going to be, in the end, they're all going to be using the Naoris token, but you're going to have different requirements depending on what is the use case that you're looking at. If you're looking at like, I don't know, providing, for example, network services, I don't know, just saying like VPNs, post-quantum VPNs or whatever, at scale, then you probably need to have just, a very big, how can I say, pipe, right? So you need to have a lot of, space for data, and maybe you don't need a lot of storage and RAM. But in the other side, if you're actually talking about, like, for example, storage, then it's the opposite, right? But again, it depends on the use case of the node. The node is there from a consensus perspective and assurance of security from a baseline perspective. So you can trust the network to start with, trust the validators, right? Who's watching the watchers and all that. But then the use case is wrapped around that, and that impacts the what you would need for the node.
So you say you're going to have like a hardware node. I could potentially run something on a Raspberry Pi or something like that.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of node types already. So we have light nodes, we have backup nodes, we have full nodes, and for example, under the light nodes, we have even when we won the biggest technological challenge in telecommunications in the world with the T-Mobile championship in Bonn in Germany, not so far from where you were. We actually made a node that was so small that you could run it on a $1.5 IoT device. So it really depends on the use case, and you will be able to run nodes in actually more than one node, for example, in a Raspberry Pi. But there are other nodes for more maybe post-quantum cryptography associated stuff that are going to be quite heavy, and you would need dedicated hardware on the order of, say, I don't know, 256 gigs of RAM, right? Yeah, but that's a more specific kind of thing.
No, I like it. You can have like a little fleet of ESP32 probably devices, right? Just securing a little cluster of ESP.
Yeah, you're seeing your stack.
Yeah, no, I have so much hardware in my home. You have no idea. I'm a hardware engineer, and I like DePIN, so I have, can you imagine how many stuff I have?
I will need to check that out because I love that kind of stuff. I have lots of servers running in my house as well. I have, everything together. I have probably like 8 terabytes of RAM running around the house.
Yes, exactly. It's the Dexter Laboratory kind of thing, right?
Yeah, that's also true.
One thing that you mentioned in the beginning was like the elliptical cryptography is something that quantum computers can break quite easily. Like I didn't know. Like the elliptical cryptography is kind of like how you create a public key, private key on Ethereum, for example. How you create the wallets. No, like I'm not so much in that world. What are the worst thing that you can think of that's going to start happening if we don't prepare for the quantum era soon enough?
So elliptic curve-based cryptography is everywhere for everything. So we use it from advanced encryption standard to, we use it for everything. Okay. And it's even underpinning hashing. It's not only underpinning encryption. So, it's the backbone of all global infrastructure from a digital perspective. And that worked for the longest time. But, it stops working when you can have parallel computation. So quantum computers have infinite states. right? While normal computers have one state, a 0 or a 1, right? And things start getting very complicated from a perspective of defense if you don't change the fundamental paradigms there. So you will have a situation where I can tell you already, it's like from a public perspective, this is what's public from Google, Microsoft, and also what China claims. You have half of the qubits you would need already to break all chains. And this is why I mentioned and this is what is known, right? And 1 year ago, you had 1/10 of that. So there is a very high probability that cannot be ignored at all, that in the next 12 months, everything that the world has in terms of cryptography is going to be not only under threat, but under attack. And the thing is, you wouldn't even know, because the threat actor, let's say it's a nation state, they would make it look like a normal hack. Like you think, oh, somebody, this thing got hacked, this wallet got hacked. No, you wouldn't have a way to prove that it wasn't just because you will be able to derive, private keys from public keys. You will be able to derive. Well, you shouldn't do that, right? It's only the other way around. You will be able to derive, for example, to have hash collision, because hashes are public in transactions. And actually, one of the weakest part of blockchains is the transaction model, because hashes are public. Of course they are, because they need to be validated by the consensus. However, you can attack these hashes with quantum computers as well. And you'll be able to create double spend. You'll be able to create, to change the address, the destination address, the amount. But the thing is, they have already been broadcasted. They are signed already. So you have signed them already with your private key. So the consensus almost doesn't matter anymore. This is really, I can't stress this enough. This is really a survivability event. It's like the meteor that came for the dinosaurs, in the end. Quantum is coming for crypto, right? And it's not just for crypto. It's for the whole world. It doesn't matter if it's crypto or it's the financial system or the nuclear codes. It's all under the same kind of cryptography. And if that's not scary enough, that would lead to probably the biggest imbalance from a geopolitical perspective. So think about wars and espionage and all these things that would definitely have in our lifetimes, but maybe ever, right? Since humans started to human, right? So this is extremely important. And it's much bigger than AI. It's much bigger than, it underpins everything, right? If you don't have that, then you don't have anything. And all you think you have, you actually don't have, right? That's how important that is.
It kind of makes me want to just go buy some land in Alentejo, south of Portugal, raise some pigs, grow some grow some fruits.
Yeah,
and vegetables.
They don't care. They're going to still provide you meat and milk and all this.
Yeah, just have a hammock that's by the balcony and have my own self-sustained land, because then it's kaput, right? If you have if we don't solve this soon enough, it's going to be really problematic.
No,
for the human
you're
race.
absolutely right. And I try not to, obviously this is my space. This is where I live. This is, my life. But the reason why I laugh and I keep smiling is because I got numb to it. I've spoken about this so many times that it's, yeah, sure, annihilation, whatever. But it's definitely a very, 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 very serious matter that, because it is a survivability event, it's kind of like I hope this never happens, but let's say you get cancer, right? And it's a terminal cancer. Let's say you could go back in time. It's you would definitely warn yourself not to take certain decisions so that you wouldn't have the cancer, right? So it's a survivability event just like that. And it's our decision right now if we take those terms seriously. Because maybe it won't happen so fast. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And the reason why it doesn't matter, there's various reasons. One is obvious. You shouldn't ignore, even if it's 1%, which is not, it's way more, that you're going to die. You shouldn't ignore that, right? I mean, if you're going to jump from a helicopter and the guy says, hey man, just go on and jump, but you have 1% probability of dying, you will not jump. You will just wait for it to land. So the reason why it doesn't matter is because there is this whole thing that's going on that is called harvest now and decrypt later for all transactions, all keys of all kinds. And that's like, for SSL, TLS, SSH, all the protocols on the internet, including blockchains as well, right? Because blockchain is not special. In many ways, blockchain is actually way behind other cryptographies. Like everything in blockchain is all transactions, everything is 32 bytes. That's 256 bits. And if you look at like, I don't know, a VPN, a crappy VPN, like it's 2048 AES. Like it's 10 times better. The only thing that saves crypto in general, and it's the whole consensus mechanism. But if you break the fundamentals of the consensus mechanism, which is the backbone of cryptography, then it doesn't matter anymore, right? And the things that makes blockchain special, like, its immutability, its assurance of state, capability to stop double spend and all these things, it all goes away, then, it's over, right? So you need to take that decision right now. So going back to the harvest, decrypt now and harvest later, why you need to be post-quantum resilient now is because all this data is being harvested. It's being stored in hard drives, and there's nothing you can do once it is, right? And somebody's waiting for a moment that they can decrypt it all, right? Or derive private keys or whatever, right? And once they do, you wouldn't even know it's just gone, right? And it's just gone, and it's not just data, it's like anything, really, right? Could be your crypto, could be anything. You see, once that's stored in somebody else's computer, you're lost. Like, it's almost like the only way for you to prevent that is to be quantum resilient now. So when it's harvested, you don't care, right? You bought time. Maybe you bought another decade, right? Because, it's almost like, do you remember like the Terminator movies where Schwarzenegger actually, travels back to the past, to save humanity from itself in the future? It's like this. Like, you need to protect yourself now to save your future self.
Yeah, all these case scenarios and all this, crazy future we're going towards to, what are the things that you guys are focusing in 2025 and beyond to prepare? Because we're building like the infrastructure for probably like the savior. You're going to be like, the savior of the humanity.
So, obviously we're thinking of, ways that keeps Naoris Protocol, because we have a lot of like nation state level interest on Naoris Protocol. So we're trying to keep it ahead of emerging threats of different kinds. But there's a number of milestones that we're focusing on. So in 2025, I believe, this year is going to be the DePINs breakout year. And I think that's going to be true for general infrastructure as well. And we're architecting this security foundation, as you know. And so, for example, we're looking to launch these, a number of solutions. I can't talk about that, but we're going to mainnet. We're looking to launch a number of solutions that are going to be quite revolutionary for a number of verticals that are built on top of Naoris Protocol, where the community is going to be the beating heart of it. And they're going to make it extremely, competitive with the existing approaches that exist. That's kind of like our goal in 2025. But looking towards like 2026, 2027, we have very audacious goals, but we also think they are achievable and they're kind of inevitable. So that's to make Naoris the mandatory security standard for all protocols. So we focus on security, we focus on post-quantum capabilities. You integrate with us, you're fine, right? So you can focus on scalability, on speed, on service, on all your offerings, and we can focus on security, right? So the objective is to make, the objective is not just to do that, as a capability, but also through regulation, and also through, I guess, natural selection, because unsecured DePIN protocols, I don't think they will survive. But it's not only DePIN protocols. It's like exchange in general and traditional infrastructures as well. That's why I say Web3 needs to be the backbone of all infrastructure. By 2030, I guess, it would be fair to say that we would be targeting, billions of devices in the Naoris mesh. across the different meshes, from satellites in space all the way to devices on Earth of any kind, and validating each other, having ledgers of each other, backups of each other, for highly resilient environments, making it the largest, security and safety framework in human history, so that we can go to the next level of civilization, when that is not just regional but global, where everybody can participate and the machines themselves are part of the system, right? It doesn't matter if it's a satellite in space or a moon base or in Mars, right? It makes no sense for these things to be, their own points of failure, right? So we're not just building for the DePIN ecosystem that exists today. We're building for the one that will exist when everything is DePIN. And that needs to be quantum first, because the traditional standards of math are not going to cut it. And that needs to be decentralized first.
I love it. Yeah, exactly. I think I'm very, very bullish on DePIN, and I think also with the help of you guys can definitely have a much more secure and safe feature, because it's something that we really, really need, apparently, right? Any final thoughts or messages for our audience, especially for those who are interested in contributing to and building the network with you?
To every DePIN builder, miner, and believer listening, what I would like to say is that you're not just early to DePIN, you're early to Naoris. I think there's a huge future for DePIN in general. You're early in infrastructure in general, and you're early in the infrastructure revolution that we're going to be the backbone of, that makes governments, corporations, and other traditional approaches that about, cloud and things like that, pretty much obsolete, and at least in their current state. Every validator joining today isn't just going to be earning tokens. They're going to be claiming ownership of a percentage of that environment, of the security layer that will protect humanity's entire physical infrastructure, right? So to DePIN projects, I guess, that are listening to us, your users that are logging and begging for security, your investors that are demanding for that, and your competitors that are already trying to integrate it, the question is, why didn't you contact us yet? So just call us. We can work with you. We can support you on this process. We have the space to do it. And whether you'll adopt it before or after your major breach, that's up to you. That's what I would say. So to enterprises that are watching this from the sidelines, I would say, the choice is simple. The future is coming. DePIN is a real thing, and that supports your operations, and it needs to support your security, your safety, your trust of your infrastructure. The alternative is to just watch your centralized infrastructure become worthless over time, as the world routes around you and, it moves in a different direction. I don't think there's any middle ground on this revolution, honestly, because it doesn't matter how you think. If you think logically, there's no other way, right? So the future isn't just coming; it's knocking on your door. That's what I would say. One node at a time. And this is bigger than blockchain. This is bigger than Web3. This is the moment that physical, let's say, reality itself becomes programmable, ownable, unstoppable. That's DePIN, man. So, Satoshi freed money from banks. We are looking to free infrastructure from itself, right? From everyone's risks, right? So, let's build this chapter together.
Yeah, no, amazing. Thanks so much for joining the podcast, David. I can't wait for actually the next episode that we're going to be doing maybe in a year to see what's the progress that has been done. For everyone listening, make sure to check deepinhub.io and check the Naoris Protocol in there to learn everything that you need about the project. There's going to be links for their Discord, Twitter, about the project, anything, how you can actually contribute as well. So thanks so much for joining, and I think it is enlightening conversation, and I guess from now I'm going to go figure out how I can secure the things that I have, because the future is coming with the quantum computing. So don't be scared. Let's just continue building Naoris Protocol.
It's a process, guys. Let's do it.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.